All right, without further ado, I would like to welcome Gina Bleedorn, the president of Adrenaline here, who is going to be talking about retail resurgence, designing a right-sized and resilient branch network. Let's welcome her with a round of applause.
Thank you. Hello. Retail resurgence. What that means is not just a resurgence in going to the retail network, although that is a thing that has happened since COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen to the branches, and it turns out people still want them and people are coming back. But what I'm really going to talk about today is a resurgence we're seeing in attention on the retail delivery channel and the retail delivery network. And it's not even necessarily a resurgence in capital budgets. We know those are going to be constrained at least next year, maybe a little bit in the following. That puts more pressure to do things smarter with the capital you have and to manage OpEx. So thus, a new level of attention on being both right-sized and resilient with your branch network. I'll start with some stats supporting the idea that COVID didn't kill the branch. Instead, we saw a bit of a renaissance. And so what you're seeing in these number tracks here are in blue, that is the rise of mobile. So over the past decade or so, obviously a sharp rise. In gold is the rise of online. And then in red is lobby and drive up. And so it was around 69% pre-COVID. Post-COVID hit 77, 78, and even 79% of people using the channel at least monthly. And perhaps most surprising, the biggest generational cohort using, the millennials. There's a number of theories for that. One being the first truly digital native generation that is a do-it-yourself, educate yourself, and also expect more from companies. They are expecting more from banking. And so they are looking to banking for exactly what you always wanted it to be, sales and service, basically advice. And so this chart is showing by generation how perceptions of the branch function have changed, and it's really interesting. The traditionalists, boomers, X, Gen Z, and millennials I mentioned, you can see a trailing trend in the younger you are, essentially, the more you are going to the branch for opening accounts and for advice, and the less you are thinking about it as a place for transactions. And obviously, digital adoption is driving this curve. But perhaps most interesting, Gen Z, who you probably don't think that much about yet, but you will. 20% of the population is Gen Z today, and 30% of the workforce. They are all already showing an outsized influence on the banking sector. And they are really expecting this channel to be a place where they can get advice from you and open accounts. Again, it's what you want. And actually, we just published a white paper on this, Gen Z and the Future of Finance. If you take a picture of this, I think the QR code will work. I can't be sure, but if it doesn't work, it's also just downloadable on our website at adrenalinex.com. The point being, this is showing just trends in what Gen Z is thinking about banking, and this is very much including and affecting what is happening in the branch. So the branch, let's talk about our favorite branch lover, Chase. Chase was kind of slammed in their Investor Day presentation at the beginning of this year. One analyst saying, why do you have a love affair with your branches? And they said, yeah, because they work. And so they call it their storefront, they call it their deposit gathering machine. About 7 of 10 of their customers are visiting branches regularly, and they are opening new accounts in them. 85% of business checking, 50% of mortgages. And they are having incredible increases, 14% compounded annual growth rate increase in deposits over a 5-year period. They haven't reported on 2023 yet. And perhaps most interestingly, in markets where they have branches, they have 6 times more digital engagement. So this is supporting the idea that it's not just digital. When you have digital and physical together, that makes the most sense. And also, interestingly, although Chase is known as the branch builder, while other large banks are shrinking, so 15% of Chase's network has been opened in the last 5 years, look at this stat, 22% has been consolidated in the last 5 years. So they have opened way more branches than other large banks, but they have consolidated almost just as many. They are right-sizing for resiliency. And that is the lesson of essentially what I'm going to talk about. Now, all of you are on some kind of journey from going, hopefully you don't have any branches that look like the black and white one, you might, but you're all going from moving to the, some of you do, I know. They're going from old purpose to a new purpose. The majority of your branches were built for transactions that are no longer occurring in them. And so everyone knows some version of, you have to get smaller, you have to incorporate more technology, and you have to account for advice giving, sales and service. Everyone is somewhere on this journey, but you can't snap your fingers and change construction of sites all at once. So how do you do it? I have spoken about this idea of a North Star on this stage for many years, and if you haven't heard it, I will let you know the North Star is not your branch of the future. The future is never here. You should not have a branch of the future because it's not actually a thing, but rather, your North Star is an idea. It's a shared vision of the organization as to what the future of retail delivery should be. Not just what a cool new branch concept is, but how do people operate within it? How is technology integrated? And how does it scale across formats, across your network? But perhaps as important, maybe even more important, you need a road map to get there, because I mentioned it has to be a journey. It's not a digital app update. You can't just push a button. So how do you do these two things together? And what we're seeing is embodied in this quote by a futurist guy who died that none of you have heard called Alvin Toffler. But I love this quote. You've got to think about the big things while you're doing the small things so that all the small things go in the right direction. And so what we see more often than not is you've got a new location and you've got a new site and you think, ooh, we're going to do this different a little bit. And there's not a forward-thinking plan that's going 5 years into the future. It's going maybe 1 year into the future. And so I'm here to encourage all of you to think more ahead and to think about a plan, because ultimately what's happening is that your greatest expense in your physical network, if there are any CFOs in the room, they know, or just ask yours, is in fact your greatest expense. It could be being better spent. And the crux of the issue is that you are likely spending the money anyway. You have critical upgrades, perhaps on a rolling facility schedule or a date last touched. You have technology upgrades that you're doing in varying capacity. You have leases that are coming up that you have to manage. You may have planned renovations or new upcoming, maybe we should renovate or not. You may have relocation requirements or opportunities, consolidation opportunities, new branches and new markets and de novos, and even new products that you may need to figure out how to deliver. And what is happening is that all of these things are essentially occurring in silos, and they're not connected to one another because someone is doing their job, they're doing renovations that they've always done or upgrades that they've always done, and they're just going through the motions and building the same teller line. Please don't build a teller line if you're doing that, please. And there are other things happening. There's technology. Someone's rolling out ITM somewhere and is not connected to customer experience initiatives in the organization. Or you're going into new markets and you don't have the right data behind where to go or know what format to put there, which is just as important as where to go. And the worst part about the siloing is that all of these things cost money. And in a time where capital is tight, you need to be spending money smarter than you've ever done it before. And so I am here to tell you today, you need a strategy and a plan for retail, a strategic plan for your retail delivery, for your branch network. And this needs to be in line with a strategic plan for the organization. Many of you, hopefully, have some form of strategic planning. Having a subset of that strategic planning for retail delivery is critical. And it is critical now more than ever because things have changed now more than ever. Now, how do you do that? Analytics. I've spoken a lot, again, on this stage about analytics, but I think, and I could be wrong, you guys need more data like you need, as my mother might say, a hole in your head. In that, data is great. It's critical. You need it. But there is so much of it. It's overwhelming, and it's often not served up in ways that you can use it. You need data insights. You need data-informed decision-making. And you need to consider, when you're talking about physical branches, the design, as much as you need to think about the analytics. So the analytics are going to tell you where there's the most market opportunity, where is there room for consolidation to both save and spend. But then design considerations are going to tell you how to create the right model of operational delivery, how to be efficient, how to be as small as possible. And really it is about how these two things are integrated together. But even more than that, there needs to be an exercise in visioning. It absolutely should be aligned with where the industry is headed, but it should also be aligned with what your organization views as what's right for your bank or your credit union. And even more than that, you need stakeholder alignment. And this may be the hardest part of all. You need all the key decision makers at the table in the room so you eliminate those silos. And ultimately, that is how you create a retail strategic plan or some version of that. Now, back to those two R words, right-sized and resilient. As you think about how to make the right plan, these two words are at the forefront. If you're doing these two things, or these two things are your beacons, your measures, you'll be in good shape. And I'll talk about what right-sized really means. Hopefully all of you have heard of this word. There is a concept also many of you probably have heard of, critical mass. It means there is an S-curve in every single market of market share to branch share. And when you hit critical mass, your chances of your market share exceeding your branch share more than double. So the point is, you want to appear as present as possible in any market that you are in. And the name of the game is perceived convenience. That means you don't necessarily need a bunch of big, ground-up, beautiful branches. You need some, you need hubs, but they need to be supported by smaller branches, by smaller formats that are maybe inlines or just micro or smaller square footages. And they need to be supported by even smaller branches that are, or not branches at all, that are just points of presence, ITMs, ATMs. And they all work together. I'll start with some examples of the smaller format, like this. So this could be better. And this is an example, not to pick on my wonderful client, Park, who in the process of rebranding, we were able to upgrade. But this is an example of a point of presence needs to be in the right place, but it also needs to be optimally designed so that it's projecting and it's getting, when you look at the one on the left, you don't even see a brand. On the one on the right, you do. And so a lot of these are coming up for many of our clients in all kinds of ways. This Guarantee Bank in Mississippi, this location, actually, in an area of lesser opportunity, the CEO chose to take down an old underperforming branch and put 2 ITMs in its place. CUTX, Wood in Houston, these are all examples of points of presence that are supporting a hub and spoke strategy. They are not all. Then we go to some inlines. This is another example of something that could be better. And this was a renovation just on the exterior for United Bank. This is on K Street in DC. And it completely amplified the brand projection, just not even changing operations, just using design, branding, color, lighting, digital signage to project outward. And then, staying with this client in this same market, they started going to different sites. So now this is in Georgetown in a micro fit out. We were able to make it project day and night with the use of branding. We created this cool neon sculpture art that reflected their brand and color from the inside out. And then this went into a larger facility in Navy Yard. Again, the same elements in play. This is now a different site, a different application. And then they had a corporate facility in a different part of DC that also needed to be branded in a consistent way. And so now these key locations that, by the way, were analytically informed on where to go and what format to put there, were then brand billboards amplifying their brand and supporting their other branches so that in this area of DC where they were located and previously had less than 1% of brand awareness, they have now increased that just with branch presence. Now, they're also supporting it with marketing. You can't just build it and they will come. But the branch presence has helped them tremendously increase their awareness, consideration, and ultimately drive actual acquisition. And that's the idea. And then we go into the bigger branches, standalones. Now, this is an example of a standalone in the most advantageous area and an inline in a second most advantageous area. So again, analytics showing you where to go, but also design informing what to put there. Another example, this is now in LA of a different credit union where a large example and an inline example, the same idea, the same North Star concept, the same elements. And then another example in Richmond of another credit union doing something similar, large, smaller, and consistency. And then finally, this is a flagship example considering your key markets. This is Valley Bank on Fifth Avenue in New York, where it's worth spending. I won't tell you what they spent on that very large digital soffit, but it is winning some awards, so I think it's worth it. And it's attracting, obviously, a lot of brand projection and attention. Think about investing and over-investing in your flagships because they are statements of your brand. It is this all-in combination that creates optimal right sizing. Now, the second piece is about resiliency. This is about planning smarter. And when you think about being resilient, you think about your branch network. There are 4 the potential value drivers of your branch network, period. And they are these 4. They are going to help you be more efficient. They are going to help mitigate attrition and retain customers and members. They are going to help you cross-sell and deepen engagement, and they are going to help you acquire. And these together are measures of both savings and growth. And really, the name of the game here is about saving to grow and reallocating money. And that needs to be applicable for as much as your current branches as new branches. And the idea of the North Star can then go backwards and go forwards over time on this journey. An example of a client doing that, this, again, there was some room for improvement in the before picture. A new North Star created for Citizens National Bank of Texas, then rebranded to VeraBank, gave them a new operational model. They reduced FTE by about 1.5, but then it wasn't a one-off. It was designed to scale across their 42 branch network, and scale it did in varying tiers of light refreshes to major renovations. And then after achieving operational savings, they could go into new markets with new deployments and truly new North Star experiences, building on what they'd created with a hub and spoke that looks like this. Another example of that and what you could do with it, and this example for Penn Community Bank, they were actually in a great location with a less than great facility. And so we were able to renovate it on the outside and also renovate it on the inside to double down on where they are. If you're in the right location and whatever, maybe you own the building, it may make sense to stay there and renovate it into what it needs to be. Another example of UW Credit Union built some big, beautiful branches, did some great things with the drive up. We had a lot of community connection in there too. But this credit union is in the process of reevaluating this North Star so that they can evolve it. And so some other examples of that, this branch was created 7 years ago as First Horizon, then First Tennessee, their new branch of the future, North Star. And 5 years later, we evolved it to this from Middle Tennessee to Brickell, Miami. And this is an example of how North Stars need to keep evolving. A second example, Charles Schwab, a North Star that started in San Francisco, and a second North Star right here in Austin that represented their new future model. And another example, Comerica, we met them and helped them evolve. And the important thing, I mentioned this before, this isn't about a new, cool, single branch. It is about a network of points of presence. For Comerica, they were also siloed, and they had initiatives going on all over in the bank that they didn't actually connect. And so this helped connect those initiatives, and it went to both their current branches in a refresh and renovation program that they do now annually, and future branch deployments. So you need a plan and a strategy. Also, you can call it a strategic plan, and it needs to focus on being both right-sized and resilient. And so the journey looks kind of like this. You're here in this little dot. You start with this strategic plan. You prototype it in a single location and then pilot it in a few in different formats. But then you document it, you iterate on it, and you start rolling it out in waves. And what happens is you're going to get more efficient as you go and faster as you go on this journey to your North Star that really never ends. And so I will leave you with this quote, that vision without execution is hallucination. Thank you, Thomas Edison. The point is, have a strategy and a plan. You all kind of know what you need to do. You need to get there. Come see me if you have questions, and thank you very much.